It was more so breathing through it when it was like hot and in the summer, which was like, but I really did enjoy the mask. It looked so great.
I got to practice working on really small budgets in really weird places and having to call up on my friends and be like, hey, will you come hang out for 3 weeks?
Special weight wasn't given to it in a way that would feel like misplaced. It was just like natural and really cool and just like, oh yeah, and by the way, they're attracted to each other.
Oh, he is so pissed.
Who are you?
Before we get into Bloody Axe Wound, I just have to geek out for a moment because I'm a massive AP Bio fan all the way since episode 1. And so I have to ask, what are your thoughts about this little resurgence that the show has had on Netflix?
Okay, well, first of all, Tyler, that means so much to me. Thanks for being a fan since day one. And it's been so fulfilling, truly, to like have this revival and like have more people rediscover the show and just like reconnect with all the people that we got to work with. It's honestly just been such a wonderful resurgence. So feel very grateful. Thanks, Netflix.
And I was also so pumped to see you share the screen with Eddie Levy again. Was that just by chance, or was there a recommendation involved?
There was maybe a bit of both. No recommendation from me, but Matt, our director. He is also a huge fan of AP Bio. If that helps anything. But yeah, so he loved Eddie's work and mine as well. So here we are. And like it's just so funny because Eddie and I are like best friends. Like, I just love him so much. And the fact that we got to work together again, like we've always thought like, wow, we're so grateful for AP Bio to like have brought us together. And we've always thought like, if we are gonna like work together again, we're gonna have to like write something ourselves. And like we have our own like pitch that we've been working on for a really long time. Like we're just collaborators. We like made the podcast together. But the fact that someone else was like, no, you guys need to work together again, was just like the icing on the cherry on top of the cake. It was just like the best thing ever. And we were like, we literally getting paid to like hang out in like beautiful upstate New York. And yeah, it was a dream.
Oh, you have great chemistry. And Molly, I'd love to ask you about Dexter, but I'm going to get to why we're here, Bloody Axe Wound. So, Molly, I think that what I enjoy about Sam is that she feels like she's going to check a stereotypical slasher box, but manages to break the mold. What was your favorite part of developing Sam into such a unique character?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly that. Like every time, it's funny because now that I'm remembering a little bit of what Sam does in the movie, there's certain parts that are opposite of what I'm about to say. But you're watching a horror film and you're like, why are you doing that? And Sam's often doing the opposite. Like, so she fights back, and that's what Abbie says about her. You know, like she's not like just gonna lay down and die in this town where everybody else is. And it was just fun. Like it was fun to be a badass and like be someone who is different than me and also learn a new skill. I'd never drummed before. And I had like sessions and sessions of drumming lessons, like private drumming lessons. And it was so cool. And I think that really added to like, it's crazy, but like in such a big way that added, like learning how to do that made me feel more like her.
And apologies if I'm saying this wrong. Is it Sari?
It's Sari.
Sari? Okay, Sari. So Sari, you managed to make Abbie likable despite all the killing. So what do you think was the key to still making sure that she connected with the audience despite the fact that she's doing some rough things on screen?
Yeah, of course. I think it's like, I mean, she's a teen. Like it's her curiosity. And I think that's like why we love Abbie. It's because she like starts to question like the life that she's been living like with her dad and like being serial killers and like that's their family business. And then all of a sudden she like meets Sam and like the rest of the students. And it sort of like creates this journey for her to like question like the life she's been living. And I think she just, I don't know, I was talking about this in another interview, but Matt, our director, we were like talking about a word that kind of like encapsulated like her spunk and like her punkiness and like her sort of like essence, and we came up with this word that was bouncy, and I feel like that's like her pace, and like she's just like going like, and she's just there to like explore and like learn more about herself. So yeah.
My favorite aspect of your romance in the film is that it's just treated as a romance, and it does a great job of normalizing queer relationships when so many other films feel that they need to put it in a different category. Was it always written that way, or did that come through filming?
Yeah, I think it was always that way, and I think that that's part of why I liked the script too. I'm a queer woman, and Matt, the writer director, when I read the script and we talked to him, and he was like, I just like, it didn't feel like gimmicky. It didn't feel like, it just felt like this is just another thing about these characters, and it wasn't like special weight wasn't given to it in a way that would feel like misplaced. It was just like natural and really cool, and just like, oh yeah, and by the way, they're attracted to each other.
It wasn't forced. It was just like part of their existence.
So, and it seems like one of the most fun parts of any role is coming up with some of the background of your character and figuring out their motivations. And I can only imagine how much that comes into play when you're playing a killer. So, Sari, what was some of the background for your killer persona that we may have not gotten on screen? Because I feel like we only got a glimpse of the like wolf mask. And
that's so good. I mean, yeah, I spent a lot of time talking with Matt about like what her life was prior to this movie, and like I think she has really spent a long time like looking up to her dad, who is like Bladecut, and she has always wanted to take over the family business. So when she gets that opportunity, it's like I have to like grab onto it. And she's the type of person that like, there's a scene where she's like spinning a knife and like kind of showing her like knife skills. So like I imagine that like she has been doing that since she was like 3 years old, kind of thing. Like had lessons like with her dad, and like things like that. So really like, cutting her teeth, so to speak, with like her killer skills.
how hard was it to see through the mask?
You know what? That's a great question. It was more so breathing through it when it was like hot and in the summer, which was like, but it wasn't too bad. They like, shout out to props and like all the whole team for like really making me feel comfortable. And yeah, I really did enjoy the mask. It looked so great. And there was so much like, when they had to put blood on it, and yeah, it kind of became a part of Abbie for sure.
Can you do me a favor and explain what is happening with the dance during the credits?
Okay, so I remember watching and be like, oh my God, it changed. I love the dance scene. That was actually one of my favorite scenes, I think, when I first read it. And Matt is also like really into music. Like that's something we shared. So we would like share playlists of like character playlists that we'd make, or like just sort of giving like a holistic view of like what the show or what the movie would feel like. And so there was this great French song that he used like for that original dance scene that I would always listen to. But essentially it's sort of like, hold on, how do I describe this? It's sort of like this like wolf and like cat, or like a wolf and mouse situation.
Yeah.
Because this scene was originally when Abbie is about to go murder, oh my gosh, what's the character's name? Angel. Izzy,
there you go.
Izzy. And yeah, so it's sort of like the showdown, like the final showdown between both of them before she kind of makes the decision to like do the thing. So yeah, it's kind of like they're kind of mirroring each other, and like in this like new sort of like world where they're like understanding each other, and but also right before it all like goes to shit. So
yeah.
While some dads fix toilets, my dad terminates teens.
I'm a big slasher guy, and I really enjoyed my time with Bloody Axe Wound. It was an absolute blast. And so I have to ask, what has it been like to produce your first feature film with Mischief Farm?
Yeah, I mean, my husband and I have been producing separately for at least a decade. And I started off in the only place that chicks were being allowed to produce, and that was in Christmas movies. And so I got to practice working on really small budgets in really weird places, and having to call up all my friends and be like, hey, will you come hang out for 3 weeks? So that was very good practice for something like this, because when you're doing a horror film, all the money has to go towards special effects and, and your locations and that kind of stuff. So you really are still calling up all of your buddies. Like, pride. So thankfully, Jeffrey, his best friend, Billy Burke, watched our director, Matthew John Lawrence's last movie, Uncle Peckerhead, and was like, I'm in. I want this. And Jeffrey and I just got to play with our buddies.
So is that how the screenplay came your way? Like, walk me through that, because I'm really curious as to why this was chosen as your first feature with Mischief Farm.
Yeah. We, during the pandemic, like everybody else, we were just watching everything that was on streaming. And we saw this movie, Uncle Peckerhead, that was so weird and fucked up and funny. And I remember loving going to sleepovers in high school and watching Sleepaway Camp and the funny slasher movies that people aren't really making right now. And so we reached out on Twitter to the filmmaker, Matthew, and we're like, what else do you have, dude? And he sent us this stack of scripts, Bloody Axe Wound being one of them. And it really was the perfect mix of Jeffrey genres that he's worked in, the blood and guts, the horror, the action stuff. And then my experience in this teen drama world where chicks are really kind of put in a box. And I liked that this movie combined those genres and let the girls out of the box. What does it look like when they're in charge? I
talked to the girls earlier today, and the one thing that really stood out to me in this film that I really appreciated, and it's a script thing, it's that the relationship between the two of them is just treated as a relationship. It's just a romance. It's not like, oh, it's a gay romance, because I feel like so many films always have to put that in a separate category and make it a thing.
No, it's a norm. And so it should be treated as a norm. And our actresses were so great because you could feel very real chemistry. Sari and Molly were a dream together because there was a real kismet thing happening. They're meeting each other for the first time doing this movie, while their characters are meeting each other for the first time in this narration. And so being able to capture just any kind of electricity between two actors is a really fun thing as a producer. So we felt really lucky that we had them. And yeah, I think the norm, especially after Brat Summer, is that these relationships are super important to young women. And we wanted to really respect it and treat it well.
Well, and your husband also plays Butch Slater here and seems to be having an absolute blast. Were you tempted to join in on the acting fun yourself?
No, because I'm like the bitch behind the scenes. It's like, where's craft service? I was being a crazy person. No, that was a really fun night because we're filming in the Hudson Valley, right? And that's where we live full time. So not only is my son going to work with dad, and my kids have grown up on sets, but that was the first time our son stayed overnight for an overnight shoot. And when you're a preteen and you're 4 o'clock in the morning and your dad's covered in blood and you're on set with it's fun. But then school was still in session. So I had the local news outlets and all the moms at school are like, we heard your husband was slaughtering someone behind the Crazy Bowls in Kingston. What was going on? That was a different experience.
That's hilarious. Was it always the intention for him to take a role in the film?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we always wanted Jeff forward facing in the film because of his body of work. He lends a credibility, and I respect that about him as an actor, separate from my husband. And so putting him in that spot, and then his very best friend in the whole world, Billy Burke, they've been friends since they were 17 years old. Billy spent Thanksgiving with us, 6 months before we started filming, and we were trying to figure out who was going to play Bladecut. And we showed him Uncle Peckerhead, and he was like, "It's me. I'm Bladecut." And we're like, "What, Billy? Really? You would do that?" He's like, "Yeah, all day, done. I'm Bladecut." And he just was so perfect. So the idea that these two boys who have been best friends since they're 17, wandering around the same Clover Falls universe as competing serial killers, really just fulfills a lot of boyhood dreams for them.
That's amazing. Well, and it sounds like you're a fan. So what do you view as the gold standard of slasher films? What informs your slasher viewpoint the most?
The movie that I watched on repeat. So maybe not necessarily like my favorite. I really was into when Rob Zombie made that kind of resurgence of like beautiful gore and kind of tongue-in-cheek horror films. I was really into that in the early 2000s. But my gold standard is Sleepaway Camp. I went to an audition once where I met the actress who played Angela and lost my mind, just could not handle it. And I think there was a perfect storm in that movie of camp special effects, which are my favorite. I love it when you know it's not real and you jump anyway. I loved the bitchiness and kind of that heightened reality of the other campers and the other characters and like their promiscuity and kind of their commentary on like the Reagan era yuppie bitches. And I loved kind of this social commentary. You know, they were talking about characters and gender before that was a topical issue. And so I think that slasher films can be political. They can comment on what's going on in the national conversation in a way that is important. And so my hope is that this film does the same thing.
Well, and I loved how the kills here were practical. And I know so many other films take a CGI route. Was there ever even a question to go like the practical route here?
I mean, no, the practical route was always kind of the focus. We loved what was done on Uncle Peckerhead for a very small amount of money. Matthew John Lawrence made the most of every single dollar he spent on that movie. And it was perfect, in my opinion. I loved the way it was done. And we were really lucky here that we had special effects artists that worked on Dead City, Jeffrey's show for AMC. So, you know, the experience that they brought to the table and the artistry was just incredible. And so even Billy Burke, who was like, I got to sit and make up for how long to turn into Bladecut? By the end of it, he was like, I like how I look. I feel great. I feel pretty. He's proud of it. And that was a really nice text to get from him that he watched it and he's like, I'm so proud of this movie. But yeah, the kills, I love the ridiculousness of practical effects. And I think it goes back to, if you're a real horror fan, the Grand Guignol in Paris, where they were creating a lot of these effects in the theater in the 1800s. I was obsessed with that when I was in my early 20s. So being able to do that as a grown-up is fun.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, and subverting expectations and pre-established norms is often a way that a film can try and differentiate themselves from others within the genre. But slashers in particular, it's a weird thing where you have to follow a certain guideline. Are there any rules with slashers that you think personally are unbreakable?
Ooh, unbreakable. You have to care about your final girl, right? Or die. It's 2024, 2025. You know, you have to care about that person, because if you don't care if they live or die, then the film doesn't matter, right? And what's interesting about this movie is that the final girl is usually someone who's virginal, who is just figuring things out. They're just seeing the light, you know. And in this film, it's not our final girl, Sam, who is that kind of person going through the awakening. It's Abbie, the girl with the axe in her hand. So kind of playing with those dynamics was a fun way to keep that standard of the awakening with the final girl character and turn it on its head, because it's really the girl doing the killing that has to figure the world out.
So my final question is, and this is a little broad, with a movie like Bloody Axe Wound, it's getting a limited theatrical release and then we'll be releasing to Shudder. We've seen so many films released to Shudder, and all of us who are hoping for a sequel, what's the most important element in getting one? Obviously, like, it's all encompassing, but is it the streaming numbers? Is it an eventual Blu-ray release? Is it that brief theatrical run? Like, what is the most important?
I think some heat on the streaming is a big deal. I think people being really vocal is a big deal. And I think if you can encourage any international interest, you know, obviously this is a movie that's coming out to a nice splash domestically, but international things matter too. And so I feel really lucky that Jeffrey and I have both had careers where we have a really supportive international base, whether that's Brazil or France or Australia, you know, wherever. Those kind of numbers matter as well. So if you're hungry for it, if you want Bloody Axe Wound, you just got to be noisy about it.